Right, members. Agenda item 4F, which is the outline planning permission for land of the west side of Tot Hill Street in Minster. Once again, I'm going to ask our legal officer, Suki, to read out public speaking statements in favour and objecting to this application and a statement from Minster Parish Council. Suki, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, there are 5 statements altogether. I'll read out, first of all, the statement of Mr. Hodgson, who's in favour on behalf of the applicant. Thank you for the opportunity to address the committee on behalf of the applicant. As the report states, this is an allocated site in the recently adopted Thanet local plan under policy HO10. Therefore, the principle of housing development of this site has already been established. The scheme will also provide 30% affordable housing in accordance with the local plan requirement. As defined in the local plan, Minster itself benefits from a range of services, including public houses, church, village hall, primary school, veterinary surgery, takeaways, butchers, convenience store, library, pharmacy, post office, and railway station, as well as others. The settlement consequently provides a range of services to meet the day-to-day needs of residents, as well as excellent access to services within larger settlements beyond. This includes the railway connections and bus services. This application will also see improvements made to the Tot Hill Street roundabout, as well as a new access to serve the development from Tot Hill Street in accordance with policy HO10. The illustrative layout indicates the design intentions for the scheme. The layout shows scope for significant areas of formal and informal open space, with a network of streets providing scope for much variety and occasions to create key landmark features and vistas. The scheme also indicates opportunities for a variety of street types, with adoptable routes reducing down to smaller, more intimate shared spaces. The application site will consequently provide a suitable amount of open space, which exceeds the local plan requirement as explained in the report. Whilst submitted in outline, consideration has also been taken of policy standards, such as relating to parking standards and open space provision. This approach ensures that the illustrative layout reflects space requirements and the principles identified are realistic and can result in a high-quality environment in which future occupiers can live. As part of the scheme, there will be financial contributions made towards education, healthcare, highways and ecology. The full list is set out in the committee report under the section Heads of Terms. We also wish to highlight that there are no objections from technical statutory consultees, including Highways, Natural England, Environmental Health and the Environment Agency. In conclusion, we endorse the officer's recommendation of approval for this scheme, as it complies with all the relevant recently adopted local plan policies and will provide significant benefits in terms of housing provision and contributions towards community facilities. We trust members will be able to approve this scheme. Thank you. There is now a statement from Ms. Fairbrass, who is objecting. In the past, the Department of Environment rejected this application as it was on high-quality agricultural land in an area of special significance to agriculture and contrary to the Kent Structure Plan. Tot Hill Street is often congested at present, and as this would result in an excess of 500 people and at least 400 more cars, the current road structure is inadequate. An emergency pedestrian and cycle access point is proposed in Greenhill Gardens, often used as a bypass to the village. This is at the bottom end, where there are 3 bends in the road within about 100 yards. The number of dwellings is out of all proportion to the development of the village. Existing properties are mostly bungalows. Where in Thanet would residents work, there is already high unemployment. At present, it is difficult to get an appointment with a doctor. Bus services are poor, and there is a problem of schooling. I strongly object to this proposal and would like this read out at the meeting. There now follows a statement by Mr. and Mrs. Portainer objecting. We are extremely concerned that the proposed development will have a detrimental and irreversible impact on our quality of life. The village cannot sustain 214 additional houses, and the whole character of the village will be threatened. We chose our home because of unspoilt views and assurances the land would never be built upon, as it is Grade 1 agricultural land. This site is still regularly used for agricultural purposes. Brownfield sites must be considered at a time when we need more sustainability. The site is rich in archaeology and home to protected wildlife. The development would cause us extensive loss of privacy and be a blight on our currently unspoilt views. Traffic and emissions are a major concern to us, as there would easily be an increase of 400 cars at a time when the government aims to reduce emissions. Within 200 metres of our house and the proposed site are 2 hotels, a service area, petrol station, supermarket, McDonald's and Costa Coffee. We already endure constant traffic throughout the day, which worsens at peak times. During rush hours, exiting our driveway onto Tothill Street can take 15 to 20 minutes due to the traffic, exacerbated by vehicles and lorries exiting Laundry Road onto Tothill Street, bringing traffic to a complete standstill. Emergency services struggle to get through. We started the school walking bus 21 years ago to reduce cars in the village. We regularly count at least 200 cars at the beginning and end of every school day, as most parents opt to drive, causing congestion throughout the village. It is a safety hazard crossing all roads en route to the school, and a further increase in traffic will risk the safety of children and adults. Minster School will not be able to expand its capacity sufficiently to deal with the increase in pupil numbers. People driving into Minster already struggle to park, as there is very limited parking and the village cannot physically take more cars. There will be additional strain on our already overburdened doctor surgery. We have gone from getting an appointment immediately to having to wait several weeks. The original proposal of 150 houses increased to 214 due to the loss of Manston Airport. As there is no guarantee the airport will reopen, would it not be prudent to await the outcome for Manston before such major development decisions are made? Antisocial behaviour has increased since the last large housing development in Minster. We are frequently disturbed and have been threatened by youths hanging around the bus shelter outside our house and suffered a burglary. This proposal will put enormous pressure on roads, school, doctor surgery, the water table and sewage drainage systems. Minster does not have an adequate infrastructure to cope, and the effect of the development will be devastating. We are very apprehensive that after 30 years of living in this beautiful rural environment, we will no longer feel comfortable, safe or secure living in Minster if this development goes ahead. There now follows a statement by Mr. Murray, who is objecting. Further to my letter of 29th April 2018, in which I raised 7 concerns regarding the above development, I should like to add the following objections based on the new documents submitted to Thanet Council. Clear overdevelopment of Minster. In the census of 2011, Minster Parish had 3,569 inhabitants. The above application requests 214 dwellings. With an expected occupancy rate of 1 to 5 persons per dwelling, this would equate to approximately 500 to 1,000 additional people living in Minster at the end of construction. This is a 14 to 28% increase in the number of people using its services, foul water treatment plant, school, doctor surgery, roads, etc. This increase is too large for Minster to cope with and will significantly damage life in the village. Inadequate plan to widen Tothill Road junction with roundabout. Tothill Street is the main access road in and out of Minster. From the plans submitted for the new junction, it is clear that they are inadequate. People living in the new development are likely to use 150 to 400 cars, motorbikes, cycles to move at peak hours to and from the development. Some will turn left at the proposed new junction with Tothill Street, while others will turn right into Minster Village, perhaps to take their children to the village school. This will cause enormous traffic jams in Tothill Street, leading to frustration and accidents. The proposed widened access of Tothill Street at the A299 roundabout will only allow an extra few cars, etc. to queue, so it will not grant free flow of traffic. A completely new and separate access road should be built from the northern part of the development to join the A299. Minster's wastewater treatment plant is inadequate. In Southern Water's letter of 22nd November 2018, it states that should the application receive planning consent, then construction of the development shall not commence until details of the proposed means of foul and surface water sewage disposal have been submitted to and approved in writing by the local planning authority in consultation with Southern Water. Although there was some limited upgrading of the foul water piping close to the sewerage plant when the last major development, FTH 071400 in Minster, was completed in 2010, this is not adequate to take the outflow from the additional 214 dwellings. Significant investment is required so that Minster is not subjected to the previous regular outflow of raw sewage across the road junction by St Mary's Church and along Rochester Lane. Conclusions. I believe planning consent should not be granted because of clear overdevelopment of Minster. A proper detailed plan for foul and surface water sewerage disposal should be agreed before any further housing development in Minster. For any development at the proposed site, a completely new and separate access road should be built from its northern part to join the A299. And finally, there is a statement from Minster Parish Council. Minster Parish Council have opposed the development on this site since 2014, when the draft local plan was first published and sent out for consultation. Over 1,000 objections were submitted. We made further representation at the inspection process. It seems that none of our well-founded arguments have been acknowledged, as we are here today to consider an outline planning application for the development of this land. In short, the views of the landowners and Thanet District Council have taken precedence over those of the local residents. Many issues relating to this development have been raised since this application was first submitted, including loss of agricultural land, archaeology, water and sewage systems, medical and welfare services, and highways. After numerous exchanges with various organisations, these have been addressed, often by the promise of financial settlements, as set out in the report completed by your planning officer. Yet the overwhelming concerns for those who live in this area are much simpler. They relate to the huge overdevelopment of this rural community, the loss of landscape, the harm to the countryside, and the loss of the village gap. None of these can be solved by money. The villages in Thanet each pride themselves on their unique character and sense of community. This has never been more evident than in the recent periods of lockdown. This parish has seen considerable development over recent years, especially during the last few years, when there has been no 5-year housing supply. This has not been taken into account at all when considering the impact on this area. The addition of a site of 214 houses is the biggest single development in this village and will change its character completely. The community will be overwhelmed. Yet the conclusion must be that once Thanet District Council set upon a plan to build houses in numbers wholly unjustified by the evidence, then any planning application related to this site was predetermined. What is the value of public consultation? Lastly, the original consultations set out the inclusion in the Section 106 agreement of an area of land to extend Minster Cemetery, some small compensation for the imposition of this development. This section of the site cannot be built upon, therefore represents no cost to the landowners or developers. We note that the terms used in the Planning Officer's report refer to the sale of land to Minster Parish Council. I urge the committee to include in the agreement that this land is given to the community to ensure that at least our residents know that their final resting place is secure. We note the officers are asking for this decision to be deferred to them. Given the nature of this development and its significant impact on local residents, I ask that the final decision remains with the Planning Committee. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Suki, for that reading. I understand Councillor Rees, Ward Councillor Rees Pugh is there. Councillor Pugh.
Yes, hello Chair and hello Committee. Good evening and apologies for my lateness in joining the meeting. I think a lot of the concerns and the points that I'd like to raise, I think have already been raised by a number of residents in the Parish Council, so I will just summarise them quite quickly. For me, as one of the ward members, I was quite keen to ensure that this application was brought before you, and that's the reason why I called it in, mainly because it's such a large application, and it really does have the potential, well, I'm almost certain that it will completely transform Minster Village beyond recognition. Many of my concerns, and I'll be honest, they are quite a few, and this goes back to the beginning, is that not only has the applicant failed to, I believe, consult widely enough with the community. To the best of my recollection, I think the last time that they consulted with the community, I think, was in 2019. As we all know, with the COVID-19 and the pandemic, a lot of things have changed since then, and particularly, I think, the type of housing that is needed for the village, for the villages, particularly Minster. We need houses that have bigger spaces, bigger rooms. A lot of people working from home now, so I think that isn't reflected within this application. But also, as well, I'm incredibly concerned. It's referenced with KCC as one of the consultees in their responses that Minster School doesn't have the capacity to take on any new primary school children that will grow up in the village and need to go to a primary school from this as a result of this development. But they've estimated that up to 60 new primary school pupils will need to be educated within the local area. And even within the KCC report, it says that this will happen at the Manston Green Primary School in phase 1. Well, I mean, we all know that hasn't been built yet, and actually that leaves residents in Minster and these potential new residents at the mercy of a primary school that may not actually be built, or built in time and finished in time for this development, which is always the risk and always the worry. And quite honestly, it's my view that if the local primary school doesn't have room and has no way to expand and accommodate more children, then really any sizable development such as this should be refused alone on that basis. Also as well, and this is particularly a concern that is raised with me repeatedly from residents along Tothill Street, but also in the top of the rest of the village, there's such congestion as you come onto the main road, particularly around the roundabout. You know, many people, when they drive to work in the morning, you know, I've got many residents that live in Hill House Drive, just adjacent on the other side of Tothill Street to where this kind of access would be, the new access would be for this development. I have many residents that on their way to work, rather than as they exit Hill House Drive and turn right and then try and queue to get onto the roundabout to then go to work across Thanet, they turn left and they go all the way down Tothill Street. They go out of Minster through Monkton Road, and they then go through Monkton to get onto the A299, A249, the Monkton roundabout, to then be able to get to work. And I think, as a resident has said in one of their written submissions to the committee, you know, there are people queuing for at least 20 minutes to half an hour to try and get in and out of the village, particularly at peak times. So, you know, with the potential for this to have 300-400 more cars, you know, potentially coming in and out of the village at any one time, quite honestly, it fills me with dread. And I think it's for issues such as that the applicant hasn't really considered the needs of the local community. You know, this is an applicant that is seen an opportunity now that this land has been allocated in the local plan, and feels that it's their opportunity to cash in, when quite honestly, I think, as has been raised, it's grade 1 agricultural land. And as a ward member, I would urge the planning committee to seriously consider this application, and that rather than defer and delegate, I would urge you to refuse permission today on this application. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Pugh. I now ask our planning officer, which is Emma Fibbins. Nice to see you today, Emma, somewhere, to give her report, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Okay, can you see the screen okay?
Yep.
Okay, great. Okay, so this is the application site outlined in red. So on the right-hand side of the screen, this is Tothill Street, running down from the Tothill Street roundabout. Below the site here, this is Fairfield Road, leading into Greenhill Gardens, and to the south here is Prospect Road. And then above the site to the north, you can see the A299. So part of part of the site is in the same ownership, but not within the application site. So the area in blue doesn't fall within the application site. So this is just showing the allocation. So the red line follows the allocation line for the housing site, other than the cemetery expansion area. So you can see this area here is proposed as being part of the expansion of the cemetery and falls within the red line, but this falls outside of the housing allocation site. So this area here is allocated in the Planning Local Plan under policy HO10 for 250 units. The policy states that the development should have vehicular access onto Tothill Street. It should be provided with an emergency access. There should be highway improvements associated with the development, and open space should clearly be provided within it. And the average density suggested within the policy is up to 35 dwellings per hectare. So this is the application site in aerial view. So this is the area here, the darker area. So this area again to the north here isn't within the application site. It's just this L shape here. And this is Tothill Street running down the centre. And a closer view of that, again, Tothill Street running along here. This area here is the cemetery. So again, this area here would be the cemetery expansion area. To the north of the site here, you can see this is the listed building. So this is the closest listed building to the site, but is above the cemetery area. And here you can see the Tothill services with a petrol station and hotel and McDonald's. So this is just taking it from different angles. So again, Tothill Street is running through the centre here. So the vehicular access into the site would be in approximately this location. And this is just taking it from the A299, looking back into the site, again showing the relationship between the site and existing development in Minster. So the boundary of the site runs along this area here, where there's an existing bridleway. And again, the boundary of the development would run along this central part here, other than the cemetery expansion area. So these photos just show you a bit more detail of the site. So this photo is taken from Greenhill Gardens to the south. So this is the location of the proposed emergency vehicular access into the site. Oh, sorry. Again, this is just showing it again here. So again, the emergency vehicular access would be in this location, and here is the application site. So you can see it is currently in agricultural use. The line of vegetation along this boundary here, this is the location of the bridleway, and this would be the boundary of the site. So again, just going into the site, you can see existing development within the Greenhill Gardens. These are existing bungalows with quite shallow depth gardens. And then this is looking towards the west of the site. So this is the western boundary along here and the bridleway. And this is looking towards properties in Prospect Road and Prospect Gardens. And then again, just another view here. And then this is again looking back towards Prospect Road. And now this is looking towards Tothill Street. So the cemetery is on the left. To the right is Fairfield Road, and you can see there's vegetation along the current boundary. And then this is Tothill Street, so you can see the properties on the other side of Tothill Street. And again, the vehicular access onto Tothill Street would be approximately here. So this is in Tothill Street, looking towards the application site on the left. So the vehicular access would be approximately here. The bus stop is on the right-hand side of Tothill Street, and again you can see existing development, and this is running up towards the roundabout towards the north. And this is now taken from the north, by the A299, looking south towards the application site. So this is the existing bridleway that runs along the western boundary of the site, and again you can see the existing development in Prospect Road in the distance. So in terms of this public right-of-way, you can see it's currently an unmade track, but is used as part of the connection to the cycle network and for pedestrian use and equestrian. This again showing the boundary, looking towards the site. On the left here, you can see the cemetery. And this is showing the cycle link. So this is the current cycle link next to the A299, which links onto the bridleway, which runs down into Minster. And again, you can see the cemetery area here. And this is now taken on a slightly raised level. So behind me in this photo is the A299, and there's an embankment. So there's quite a change in ground level between the A299 and the site. So this is taken at a raised level, just showing you the difference in ground level. And then here you can see the A299. You can see that there's a landscaping buffer before reaching this secondary road that runs alongside here, which also has the cycle link. And then again, you can see the bridleway here. And in this distance here, you can see the listed hotel, which is the closest building to it. So the hotel is there, and the development would be on the far right of this screen. And this is just again showing, so this is not the application site now, this is further west, but just showing again the relationship between the road and the site and the existing vegetation that exists between them. So the application that's been submitted is not for the full 250 units, it's for 214 units, so it falls below the actual allocation number. It's in outline form, so the consideration is for the principle of the development for this number of units, and it's also for the vehicular accesses into the site. So all other matters are reserved. As part of the application, this parameter plan has been submitted, so this would be one of the approval plans. What this plan is showing is the green area here would be the cemetery expansion area. So this has been submitted because the original policy allocation policy for the site actually included a requirement to expand the cemetery. As the plan has gone through the inspector, it was decided that there wasn't a need for this expansion, and the inspector removed this from the policy. So the policy now no longer requires an expansion of the cemetery. However, it's still being shown on the plan. So if the plan was to be approved, it would be approving the change of use of this land for cemetery expansion use, and then that would be available to the parish council, but it's understood that would be for the parish council to purchase from the applicant rather than it being a requirement that this land is provided to the parish council. And there's not a requirement for us to be able to demand that through a legal agreement or through a condition, because it's not a policy requirement. But that's currently being still shown on that parameter plan. The area in pink is the archaeological exclusion zones. So from work that's taken place prior to the submission of the application, it's been found that the site is very rich in archaeology, and it's shown that there's a Roman trackway that runs through the site. So this long line here is the Roman trackway. North of this area, there's evidence of two small settlements, and there's also evidence of Bronze Age barrows, which are the circular areas, which are basically old burial grounds from the Bronze Age. So these areas have been found to be extremely important and not something that we would want to build over, and therefore they are shown on the plan as exclusion zones where development, actual physical development, cannot be constructed over it. The only exception is the vehicular access. The vehicular access comes into the site here and would go over that exclusion zone at a single point, but that has been accepted by the archaeological officer. The area shown in yellow is an area that restricts the maximum height of development, so it's showing it as no more than 1.5 stories in height. So I'll just show you this plan in a bit more detail. So the reason for this is that the properties in Greenhill Gardens are bungalows. The gardens are quite shallow in depth, and therefore it's being considered when the applicant has considered the application prior to submission, that any development exceeding 1.5 stories could have a significant impact on them, and therefore this has been shown on the plan as being an area restricted in height to 1.5 stories, which basically would result in chalet-style bungalows, therefore limiting impact on those properties. So this plan has also been submitted. This isn't a plan for approval, but it's just an indicative plan showing the amount of open space across the site. So the plan is showing that in terms of formal open space, which we would consider to cover amenity green space, allotment space and play space, that 0.57 hectares of this is being provided. This exceeds the 0.8 0.53 hectares that's required through the policy in the local plan. So that exceeds the minimum. And in terms of the informal open space, which covers the general landscaping, so this is the area that's lighter green around the edge of the site, this area is shown as being 4.12 hectares, which significantly exceeds the 0.92 hectares requirement within the policy. So the reasons for this has linked to the fact that there's been the archaeological exclusion zones. That's limited the amount of development that can actually fit onto the site, which is what has also led to the reduction in the unit numbers. So the 214 falling below the 250 is because you can't actually develop any of this area above here. And this area here, so this has limited that. So it's actually resulted in quite a low density development. The density, if you include the open space, the density is at 16.5 the density per hectare. But then if you excluded the open space, it would be 30. So it's actually below, again, the policy requirements. So it's quite a low density development, which again is characteristic of a village location where it's surrounded by agricultural land. So actually quite a low density development is supported here. So this is the illustrative master plan that's been submitted with the scheme. So this plan is not for approval because the application is not considering layout or design, but it's showing how 214 units could fit on the site without causing harm. So what the plan is showing is, again, the fact that a low density development is achieved. It's showing that there's a mix of terraced, detached and semi-detached units that could be achieved across the site, whilst also retaining large areas of open space around the site. The unit sizes reflect the mix that's within policy SB22, which is our current need for unit sizes. So this would be addressing local need, and therefore that unit split would be acceptable. But again, we're not actually approving that at this stage, but this is what the illustrative master plan has been based on. In terms of impact on neighbours, again, there's no detail in terms of location, so it's difficult to actually fully assess any impact on neighbouring properties at this stage. But in terms of the distance, you can see this area here would be the area that would be the 1.5 storey high development, and you can see that it's possible to get quite a good distance to the neighbouring properties in order to avoid any overlooking. There's a distance of or the gardens of these properties in Greenhill Gardens is 16 to 20 metres. So with a garden depth beyond that, you'd easily be achieving at least 21 metres, if not more. For the properties in Fairfield Road, they have much deeper gardens of approximately 34 metres. So again, there should really be no real impact on privacy from these properties. I think one concern was to do with a potential from security because of the fact that there would be properties towards the rear of these gardens. And I think one condition that we've requested is to do with looking at boundary treatment that exists along these boundaries and making sure that the neighbouring properties would be secure and not have any detrimental impact from this development. It was mentioned in the planning statement that was submitted that development could be going up to 3 stories in height, and I think that quite a few objections I saw were in relation to this. We would be concerned with any development up to 3 story in height in a village location. That's not considered to be a suitable scale of development. So we have suggested a condition that does limit any development up to 2 story in height up to eaves level. So it would allow potentially some accommodation at roof level, but would limit anything up to 2 stories to eaves level, which would prevent any scope for any 3-story development on the site. So this just was in a plan showing the relationship with properties. So in terms of highways, as I mentioned, there will be this access here onto Tot Hill Street on this point here, and there's an emergency access proposed at this point here onto Greenhill Gardens. So this plan here shows the proposed access onto Tot Hill Street. It shows that adequate sight lines can be achieved, and it's also showing that there would be an uncontrolled crossing point located in this area here, which would allow for pedestrians from the development to cross the road and access the bus stop, which is located on this side of the road. And then in terms of the emergency access here, this is the plan for this. So it's showing that there would be retractable bollards positioned towards the centre of the access, which would allow for emergency vehicles to access the site should they require it. In terms of the mitigation from the development, the assessments that have been carried out, the transport assessments, have shown that Top Hill Roundabout is at capacity already, and therefore any additional traffic from this development would be causing harm, and therefore mitigation works are required. The mitigation works that they're proposing is the widening of the arm to the roundabout. So this area here is a new lane leading onto the roundabout, which would allow for any additional queuing that would come from the development. It would allow that to be absorbed through the additional lane leading onto the roundabout. So this work would be carried out at the expense of the applicant and is required as part of the legal agreement, as well as the condition. The other issue was to do with the impact on this is just showing the overview of that actually. So the widening would be in this location here, so just beyond the access to the cemetery. This area here would be showing the additional lane leading onto the roundabout. And then in terms of the other junction that's where concern has been raised, the junction is here, so Spitfire Way. It's found that this is also at capacity at the moment, and so whilst vehicles coming out here would spread when reaching the roundabout, it's considered any additional impact from additional movements would actually be causing harm, and therefore a financial contribution has been requested. In this case, it's been determined that this should be £166,000, which would go towards improvements at the Spitfire Way junction as part of the highway strategy. The other aspect is the public right-of-way. So the bridleway that runs along the western side of this site, as you saw in the photos earlier, is an unmade track. Concern has been raised by KCC, the Public Right-of-Ways Officer, that any additional people using this track, which would probably be significant given the fact that the development is basically leading onto or right next to the track, it would cause problems with that track, given the fact it's an unmade track, and it would cause damage to it. And this is quite an important link given the fact that the cycle network extends onto it, and it's a main footpath link. So as part of the application, it's been requested that the surfacing of that bridleway, the full length of the bridleway, takes place as part of the development. So that would be a hard surfaced 3 metre width running through from the 829 onto Prospect Road to the south. And that would then significantly improve pedestrian links, cycle links, and would enable pedestrian movement as well. So that is also proposed as part of the legal agreement. And again, that's just the photo again showing you the existing track. So that would be made 3 metres wide and hard surfaced. So in terms of the general development, it's been mentioned about the fact that the site is agricultural land and grade 1. Unfortunately, quite a lot of agricultural land within Thanet is at that level. The site is, however, allocated for housing, and therefore the benefits of housing development on the site and the benefits that come from that would override the fact that it is grade 1 agricultural land, the fact that it is an allocation site. In terms of the impact on the surrounding area, the site now falls within the urban areas. The boundary of Minster Village has changed to include this as part of the village confines. However, the site does still fall within the landscape character area. So in terms of views through towards Pegwell Bay in the distance, a landscape assessment has been submitted. Obviously, it's quite an open site, as you saw from the photos. So the development of the site will be causing some visual impact as a result of that. However, the main views, which will be from the 8299 looking south towards the site, there would be a backdrop of existing development around the site. So in terms of long views, the harm would actually be limited because of that. In addition, a landscape strategy has been submitted. This again is not a plan for approval because we don't currently have the layout being proposed, but this shows what could be achieved on the site. So this is Tot Hill Street running along to the north. So the 8299 would be to the left here. The yellow dots are the bridleway, and it just shows what could be achieved with the open space, the fact that there could be native tree planting along the site, hedge planting. There can be large areas of this area here is showing the potential drainage solutions for the site, which would allow for infiltration into the site, and it shows potential links through onto pedestrian links as well. So it's showing that there would be the ability to create some screening of the development and some softening of the development through the strengthening of these boundary areas. So the other issue to do with affordable housing. So with the applications originally submitted, viability was raised as a concern with the fact that with all the off-site highway mitigation works that were required, there was concern that affordable housing in full could not be achieved on the site, and it was suggested that only 12% affordable housing could be achieved. After a lot of negotiation and an independent review of the viability assessment that was submitted, this has now been raised up to the 30%, so now meets policy requirement. That it does allow for 60% of the units to be affordable rent, rather than historically we would have asked for 70%, but our strategic housing officer has no concerns with that. So 30% would be achieved on site. Again, we have no further details of that at this stage, and that would come in as part of the reserve matters. In terms of other issues, there's no concerns with biodiversity, so no protected species were identified on the site. In terms of the drainage, it would be aiming to achieve infiltration through drainage on the site. And again, we've had no concerns raised by consultees who are happy at the moment that would be a good strategy for the site, and that this would just be dealt with further at the reserve matter stage once we understand the layout. In terms of financial contributions, you can see in the report there's a long list of financial contributions that would be being proposed. 144,000 would be going towards Minster surgery to help to improve the surgery and make increased capacity to accommodate the additional people on the site. In terms of the primary school contribution, I know this was mentioned earlier. Currently, it's suggested that this would go towards the new Manston Green Primary School. Unfortunately, the Minster School at the moment doesn't have the capacity to expand. There's no space on the site to expand, so it's just not possible for the contribution to go towards Minster Primary School. In terms of the Manston Green site, it's still an extant consent. The first phase has been approved, and therefore we are expecting that site will still be developed and the school will come forward, and that will be adequate to serve pupils from this site. Alternatively, there's Birchington Primary School, which is probably the second closest or the current closest school other than Minster to the site. And lots of extension works have taken place at that school as well, so there would be potentially scope there. I think in the past, KCC have advised that by expanding other schools, it actually allows capacity for people outside the area to actually go to those schools, increasing capacity in Minster for pupils, because from what I understand, there are people that come to the Minster School from actually outside the village. So by increasing capacity elsewhere, that would actually still help the village. So other contributions have been proposed as a secondary school contribution, and then a number of other KCC contributions. So overall, the proposal does comply with policy. It falls below the allocation number and results in quite a low density scheme, which is not considered to be significantly harmful to the surrounding area, given the fact there'll be lots of landscaping to help screen the development. And whilst there will be harm from the additional vehicles, this is mitigated through the Tothill Street roundabout improvement and the mitigation through the offsite contributions for Spitfire Junction. And so on balance, the benefits from this scheme are considered to outweigh any harm, and therefore it's recommended that, subject to the submission of the legal agreement securing the contributions and mitigation works, that it's recommended for approval. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Emma. I move the officer's recommendation is adopted. Could the Vice Chair please second?
I'll second that, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Coleman Cook. I have speakers. Councillor Hart.
Thank you, Chair. As most of you will know, this falls in my remit. It's one of my wards and one of my villages in my ward. I think Emma did a very good job of trying to talk everybody out of actually agreeing to this development, because I think the only benefit she put forward, a bit of cash coming out to go to other areas. if you go to Minster, I don't know how many of you do, it is absolutely hideous to get out of the place and into the place sometimes. You are queuing forever. And just putting another parking area for you to get out and wait to get onto the roundabout is really just unbelievable. Because otherwise you just will never get out. And even you just park there, it's another 20-minute wait. It doesn't make any difference. I am concerned it will change the whole village. And it's not in the right place. We all know there's got to be planning. We all know there's got to be more houses built, but this is not the right place to build those houses. The school, as Emma agreed, doesn't have capacity. Where they think they could put them hasn't been built, hasn't been improved. So where are all these people going to go to school? And I just think that it's not a well thought out plan. It's not in the right place. You can't try and get 240 odd houses or 250, over 200 houses in an area where you can't get in and out of. And just to have a little bit extra, and we'll have a little post that comes up and down for emergency vehicles that can't get there because they're queuing or they can't get out because there's queuing, is an absolute disgrace. And I don't think that this is a well thought out plan, and I don't think it at all should be agreed by planning. If it's going to be approved in any way, shape or form, it should actually come back to committee rather than just be agreed by the planning officers. And that's my opinion. Sorry. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hart. Ian, I see you wish to come back on this.
Yeah, sorry. I just wanted to come back on a couple of points. Obviously, this is an allocated housing site. So the consideration about how sustainable the site is as a housing site has been determined through the local plan examination process. So that principal issue has already been resolved and been adopted by this council. And it's not a matter for a planning application to redo the allocation process. I think it's just really, really important to state that up front. So, yeah, I just wanted to put that point across at this stage. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Ian. And
Can I come back, Chair, on that?
yes, Councillor Hart, yes.
Thank you. I understand what Ian's saying. As I said, we know it's been agreed as an allocated site. I mean, the issue I have, as many ward councillors will have in their own areas, and has been put forward by KCC, has been put forward by Minster Parish Council, and Emma did a very good job of saying it's not sustainable as a site, is that we agree that has been agreed. There's nothing we can do about that, but it will not take that number of houses. If they want to put a housing allocation onto that site, maybe they could put 10 or 20, but not over 200 houses because the infrastructure isn't there. Okay, there's a station. They're not going to walk the mile and a half down to the station. They're going to drive, which means they're going to have to come back at some stage. There's no real transport links at the top of the road, buses, etc. There's no place for the people to go to the medical centre at the present time, let alone with another 200 plus houses. There's nowhere for the children to go to school. And it's just an unviable product. And I cannot state enough. Yes, it's an agreed point. It's an agreed area to put houses on, but it won't take that many. If you want to put 50 on there or 20 on there, fine, but not 240 odd. I mean, it's just not sustainable. Even the drainage isn't sustainable. And they're taking away the expansion of the cemetery. They're doing nothing to actually enhance the area at all. And I just think it's a great shame to do this. It's just going to cause absolute dread. People just won't be able to get out of the village. I mean, it's just crazy. You can't get out now, let alone get in. So that's just my comments. Sorry.
Thank you, Councillor Hart. I mean, I think I have to say this. I mean, it's been mentioned by the officers that, you know, this is part of the new local plan, allocated, the numbers of houses. Okay, that's been looked at, and we have to take what officers are stating to us, and I know we have every right. That's what we're here for tonight, to discuss our thoughts and whether we agree or not agree. But I think, you know, we've got some plans coming up, one next week, which are going to be very big, and obviously a lot of debate will take place. But I think we've all got to remember that if this is in the local plan, these sites are in the local plan, we have to consider that. And I'm not asking you, I wouldn't dream of it, as I've said on the odd occasion before, to agree or not agree. That is your decisions. But I think, if I may, it's a bit of an important point. So, and I have got other speakers, but I think Ian would like to come back, members.
Thank you, Chair. I don't want to labour the point because I think, I absolutely understand Councillor Hart's position as a member of the committee. I think just to reiterate that obviously the site is allocated for up to 250 houses, and obviously in this instance it's come forward for less because there are specific reasons on site why they can't provide 250 houses, which the site is allocated for. I did just want to pick up, and this was covered in Emma's presentation, and there may be further comments on this, the point with regards to the school and the capacity of the school, because the point that's being made by KCC is that there is, in terms of a contribution, which every development of a certain scale is expected to make towards the provision of new sort of school places through expansion projects, that doesn't necessarily mean that year on year there are capacity issues at Minster Primary School that would mean that the people in this, the families in this site would not be able to attend Minster Primary School. It's to say that the money from this development couldn't go to Minster Primary School because there is no projects to expand that school. And there is a clear difference there. That's a different thing from saying that when these houses are built, that there wouldn't be any space for the children at that school. And as Emma's already outlined, expansion of other schools outside of Minster creates capacity outside of Minster. And indeed, an oversubscription policy, of which I believe Minster Parish Council uses the KCC oversubscription policy, would mean that one of those policies for when the school is oversubscribed relates to how close you are to the school itself. And obviously, therefore, people in Minster would be prioritised. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Ian. Right, I have other speakers. Councillor Alban.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. This is an interesting debate, and I have to say that obviously the local plan, this scheme was, this land was put into the local plan for up to 250 houses. So, and the council, us as councillors, have approved that. So this site is to be used for development for houses. However, whilst that is agreed and is part of and gone through a due process, it is the intricacies of the development that takes place which is going to cause the problems. I've got family in Minster. I go down on a regular basis, and I totally agree with Councillor Hart, and I totally agree with Councillor Pugh. It is a bit of a nightmare, even on a less busy day. It is difficult because of the parking there. So you've got to weave your way up in and out. So my concerns in listening to this was, one, on the highway issues, and two, on the school. But I've listened to what the officers have said, and it's down to Kent County Council to ensure that there are enough places and there are enough school places for developments like this to take place, and for the children that may live on this site to be accommodated elsewhere if they can't get into Minster. My other concern is the access into in and out of the site. Now, it would seem to me to be folly for traffic to be able to turn right out of this development site to go down into the town, down into the village. They should turn left, go up and go around a roundabout, and then come back down. Also, what concerns me as well is that a pedestrian access is to be put in going across Tothill Street to allow, obviously, residents on foot to gain access to the bus stop there. I think that needs to be looked at. That needs to be looked at as to whether they should be able to get a bridge across, because that in turn will stop traffic. So I whilst I'm willing to support the outline consent for housing on the site, I do think that there are issues coming from that which need to be further looked into and determined to ensure that the general life of the villagers doesn't get any more detriment than what it's got at the present time in relation to traffic, schools and other things. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you for that, Councillor Orban. A lot of that obviously makes sense. Councillor Bayford.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Orban has actually articulated many of the things I wanted to say. I fully understand that the site is allocated for housing. I understand the number of houses that it's allocated for. There are a lot of positives, I have to say, that the dwellings are limited to 2 stories, the financial contributions, the percentage of affordable housing. However, I fully respect the effect this will have on the village and the villagers. And I think for that reason, the number of unanswered questions related to schooling, highways, things like, I think there are too many unanswered questions at this stage. I feel these things need to be firmed up. Maybe there needs to be further consultation, I don't know. But I feel that it is a little bit early at this stage to agree to this application in its current form. I don't know if there is any way that this could be further deferred in order to find solutions to these issues. But I personally feel uncomfortable at this stage in agreeing to something which has such a vast effect on the local people and has so many unanswered questions. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Councillor Bayford. Councillor Paulmore.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Chair, am I being rather naive here? The proposal is to defer this application to the planning officers. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Right. So that's all we're voting for. What we're saying is, if we don't agree with that, then it will come back to this committee for further discussions where we can deal with all the points that have been raised.
Councillor Moore, I'm going to stop you there because I can see that Councillor, I've done it again, Ian, but I don't want to put you through that. But I think Mr. Livingston can come back on that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So the recommendation is to defer and delegate for approval. So the members are making the decision about whether or not this application gets approved or not. But it's deferred back specifically for us to finalise the legal agreement to secure all of the planning obligations that are outlined in the heads of terms in the report. So if that motion that's been put before members falls, then it would be for members to propose an alternative motion. Obviously, as normal, I would advise on that if that was the way it goes. Thank you.
Thank you, Ian, for that. If you're quite happy with that, Councillor Moore, yes?
Yes, thank you, Ian, and thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Keane.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to be repeating a bit what the others have said, so I'll keep it brief. I fully understand the site's already approved and the numbers and that, so that goes ahead. But my real concern is about the traffic. I used to work in Minster, I know it well, and I can't imagine that what has been shown to us tonight is going to be enough to ameliorate the effects of that number of houses. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Councillor Keane. I can't see any other speakers. I can, yes. Councillor Garner.
Thank you, Chair. I'm a bit of a late entry into the discussion, and I won't take a long time because a number of councillors have already outlined concerns that I share with this application. One other concern I share, I haven't been assured about the amount of affordable housing that is going to end up being provided on this site when it does finally gain permission. I've heard it stated that after an assessment, it was thought to be 12%, and then following negotiations, that was moved up to the 30%, as it should be. I just want to make it clear, I would have grave concerns, if not worse, if this came back at any future date and that 30% was reduced by any amount. It needs to stay at 30%. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Garner. I don't know whether Emma wants to just comment on that. Emma?
Yeah, so the proposal is currently for the 30%, and it's proposed that would be secured within the legal agreement. So, yes, they originally proposed 12%. We've gone back and forth. We've reviewed it through the viability assessment, and it's been found that they could actually achieve 30% on the site whilst the site remains viable. So that is now to be secured through the legal agreement. So there's no scope for them to come back and reduce that at this point, because we are now proposing that 30% would be achieved on site, and that would be in the legal agreement, requiring details through the reserve matters of where that is and what size those units would be. So yes, there's no concern there with that element. And can I just comment on the other points being raised? I think members have mentioned quite a few unanswered questions with this. In terms of the highway impacts, again, I can understand the concerns that members are raising with it. It is difficult sometimes getting into the village, but the proposal for this development is in the north of the village, so it's probably actually the best location in terms of the impacts on highways, because most vehicles would come out of this site and immediately turn left onto the roundabout. I appreciate you're saying that some people may drive down to the station and some people may want to drive to the school, but a development in this location, in my view, is going to be better than something further south, right in the middle of the centre of the village, because people could come straight out of this development straight onto the roundabout, and the mitigation works are obviously seeking to improve the roundabout and widen that, so that highways have raised no objections to this scheme now. So there's no concerns raised by them following the submission of all the transport assessments and additional information that they've requested. They've asked for lots of additional information. They've asked for the crossing point and things like that. So following lots of negotiation back and forth, KCC Highways now raise no objections to the scheme and consider it to be acceptable following the securing of these mitigation works through the legal agreement and this financial contribution for the Spitfire Junction. So, and in terms of the school, I think we did cover this point earlier. I appreciate it's difficult suggesting that the money will go to a school that doesn't currently exist, and therefore I can see your concern that if that school isn't built, there could be an issue. But again, that from development coming forward, development will provide contributions to schools, and eventually they will come forward. And there are other schools that can accommodate children. There's the Birchton School. There's, as we said, the Minster School would get priority for any children in this development. And so again, I don't feel, in terms of there being unanswered questions, there's nothing more I can seek in terms of information on those issues. So I just wanted to
thank you very much for that, Emma. Yes, I can see concerns here as well, but I think you've answered them well there. Councillor Orban, you wish to come back?
Yes, I do, Chair. Thank you. As much as Kent County Council Highways may not have an issue, they don't believe that, as Emma has pointed out, that they have an issue with the highways. But unfortunately, we do, and we have a considerable issue regarding this. Could I ask Mr. Livingston that, as far as personally, I want to support this application, but with reservations. So I would need surety that the highway issues can be reviewed and can be looked at. And if not, then I think would have to go against this application. Would go against the motion. Sorry, would be to go against the recommendation, and for this matter to come back to members for consideration instead of officers. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Orban. Again, I can see, I mean, exactly what you're saying. I will go over to Ian, if you may, Ian.
Thank you, Chair. So I suppose to reiterate the points that Emma's made, but also in response to Councillor Orban, to your points there. I mean, the way that the transport assessment works in this instance obviously has been that there's been work done looking at trip generation, looking at junction capacity, looking at modelling where traffic will go out of there, out of that new access. And as Emma mentioned, this has been an application it's been with the authority for over 2 years, and all of that has been dealing with the negotiation over multiple factors, including concerns from KCC Highways. Obviously, in that time, this site has been allocated, and I know I don't want to bang on about it, but the important point here is about the sustainability of the site. The site has been assessed and been agreed by this council as sustainable. But as Emma's also said, I can understand the concerns because I think everyone has travelled down Tothill Street and knows that it can get rather busy because of parked cars on either side. The point about this site, as Emma mentions, is that it is of the village sort of expansion sites and the allocations that have come forward. It has got that direct route out and onto the main highway network. It does obviously have good pedestrian links to the south, obviously some of which are provided through the actual site itself to go to the south, that would then go down to the high street of Minster. So it's got pedestrian links on that way. And I think to come to the key bit about KCC Highways, whilst I understand members are concerned because of their own experience and what is effectively, though, anecdotal evidence, the point here is that KCC Highways, the professional expertise which they give us is whether or not there is a severe harm to the network. If KCC haven't objected, and that is on the basis of quite a significant package of mitigation works, then there is no evidence to suggest that the capacity of the highway network could not support this housing development. In terms of, if members are not satisfied with the information that's been provided, then it is something. Obviously, this is an allocated site, and in our view, there aren't grounds to refuse this application on the impact on the highway network. There's no evidence to suggest, in contrary to the KCC Highways view, to refuse it on that basis. If members, though, do not vote for the motion, then we would have to look at what information we could get and what input we can get from Highways to provide any further reassurance about the impact. But as Emma's outlined, the information is clearly outlined in the report. It's provided all the information about that. And I know members will have looked at that and will obviously see online the comments from KCC Highways as well, going into a lot of detail about the evidence that's been provided. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for that, Ian. And yes, I have. I mean, looking at the report, which I'm sure we all do, there is quite a bit. Totally understand, again, the concerns on this, but I appreciate Mr. Livingston giving us about, and I'm saying this obviously, and if members can take this on board, they've come back with their answers, and it has taken some time to do that, and I think we do, we really have to respect that. Councillor Hart, you wish to come back? David?
Sorry, Mick. I believe Councillor Hart has accidentally left the meeting when he's tried to unmute himself. Apologies.
Oh,
No, there he is. He's back. There we go. Councillor Hart, everyone.
Oh, sorry about that, boys and girls. Yeah, I understand. I am very, very sorry. I hit the cut off rather than the mic.
Don't worry.
I understand with Mr. Livingston's point of view, and I understand Emma's point of view. We're all grown-ups here, and we all hopefully have been through Tothill Street, and we've all tried to get down there at 8:30 in the morning, or tried to get up, and again at 4:30, 4:45. You cannot get out of that street for 20 minutes, half an hour sometimes. I've been stuck there for longer than that once. The issue I have is that it's not only about the road network, which is appalling, absolutely appalling, because where that is situated, if a car wants to go right into the estate, coming down from the roundabout, people aren't necessarily going to leave that junction free. You can put a yellow box from it if you have to or whatever. They could be queuing up there, then they hit the roundabout, and then that causes chaos further on. If you want to try and get out with another 240 whatever houses it is, or over 200 houses, you could have another 200-300 cars trying to just get down that road. But it's not only about the traffic issues here, Ian. I mean, we've had a pandemic. Apparently, there's going to be a baby boom because of it, which is going to put even more pressure on schools, more pressures on road, more pressures on everything else, including the medical services down there, which are very good, I understand. It's not just the road that's the issue here. It's the fact that it's too many houses in one place with very limited access. So you've got over 200 houses coming into one road. It's not the fact that they can come out of another exit or join from the main road. It's just the whole group of things that Emma described very well, but was really putting forward ideas that it wasn't a sustainable site for that many properties, which I think she did very well. And I think every councillor should be grateful to her of in the ward, that it's just not sustainable. And I think that realistically to allow officers to agree this just in principle is not the right way to go. I think it's got to come back to to committee, sorry.
Thank you for that, Councillor Hart. I mean, it's been a very good debate on this and listening some very valid points. But once again, we look at the local plan. It was us that agreed the local plan, and this site obviously was allocated for houses, and as you gather, it was allocated for more houses than the application is, for. And I totally understand your concerns, Councillor Hart. I don't want to stop. I wouldn't dream of stopping anyone, but I think with the road network, again, we've got to go along with what KCC has said at this stage. I don't live in Minster, but I have been there. I have travelled out of Margate, and I totally understand it is the junction is horrendous at times. I'd like members to think on that. A lot of work has gone on before this has come to us tonight. We must think about that. Councillor Garner.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, it was just to confirm. I mean, obviously, this has got to, if this does pass, then there's got to be in the next 3 years an application come back that deals with the reserved matters for that to be considered. And there's, as far as I'm aware, there's nothing stopping that being called into planning committee to be considered by us then, is there?
No, I mean, you're right, Councillor Garner. I mean, listening to all the views about everything on this application, it's not for me to prejudge, but it may well come back to committee on some item about this application. We have seen that before on numerous occasions over the island, and we'll be open about it. And I think that is the way we should work, and I think we all know that on the committee. But I think, looking tonight, obviously I'm going to put this to the vote in a few minutes. We must consider what's in front of us. on the agenda tonight, which I'm going to do because I have no more speakers, and I say it has been an excellent debate. Members, I'm going to put this to you now. Obviously, we'll now vote on the officer's recommendation, which is defer and delegate. You are aware how this works now. If you're for the motion, please say it, or against, or if you're abstaining. I know Councillor Patmore has had to leave because I understand there's a Ramsgate Town Council meeting tonight. So I'll go through the names. Councillor Coleman Cook.
For.
Councillor Orban.
Yeah, on balance, Chair, it'll be 4, be it on KCC's head.
Thank you. Councillor Bayford.
Yes, ditto. 4.
Councillor Curry.
4.
Councillor Dennis.
Yeah, Chair, although I agree we haven't got the infrastructure, 4.
Thank you. Councillor Garner.
For.
Councillor Hart.
Against, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Keane.
Against.
Councillor Paul Moore.
Against, Chair.
Councillor Rozeski. Councillor Rozeski.
Chair. 4, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Wright.
4. Sorry, against.
Right. I'm for it. I'm coming over to James. I think that has been, it has. Thank you, members. So an excellent debate there. That has been carried. Thank you. Okay, moving on.